And good afternoon, Sword Family. Welcome once again to the Teahouse. Dog butt. Tonight, I'm finally going to be answering Ruby's question from 2 weeks ago, because obviously last week we had our wonderful guest, Sifu Cuddle. That was still a lot of fun finally talking to a fellow Chinese martial artist after 8 months of tea time episodes. Yeah, we should probably shut those blinds because that really does brighten the crap out of my face. And I'm being dogged. So yes, Ruby, your question was not forgotten. The only issue was you asked it fairly late in the show, and I figure it needed more time for a proper answer. And I couldn't do it last week. More of those Lipton fusions. Those things are dangerous, man. So, it's getting answered here tonight in much greater detail than I could have done in the short period of time that I had a couple weeks ago. But first, as always, we go through the comments. And first to the door at 3:32 p.m. is one of my patrons, Dan Hollyfield. Good evening. Good evening, Dan. And Foxy pops in an hour, well, almost an hour later. Evening, Dan. Welcome to the Tea House. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe just to make sure he says it. Yeah. Someone has to do my job for me when it comes to, promoting myself because I'm not terribly good at it. And Donna is joining us. Hi, Foxy and Dan. Hello, Donna. And Carl is joining us. Good evening. Good evening, Carl. And Donna greeting the Withman dude. And Kitty is here. Hello, kitten. YouTube needs to work on their notifications. Well, I get most of mine, but not always within enough time to do anything about them. Carl greeting Kitty. And Foxy greeting Donna, Carl, and Kitty. Yes, they do. Carl had a heck of a time finding you tonight. Really? Huh. Oh, well. And Joe and Trey will not be here tonight. Joe Bachman is one of my other patrons. And it is his birthday, so they went out to birthday dinner. Which is completely understandable, but hopefully you guys are catching this later. So happy birthday again, Joe, and hello to Trey. Notification came over on phone, but was watching a video and didn't notify, but some with ads did get promoted. Huh. Well, I know this channel is not monetized at all. It was at one time, and then YouTube changed the rules for monetization that you needed to have like so many subscribers before you could get monetized. And it wouldn't be anyway because I deal with, swords and various other things. So it wouldn't be monetized anyway. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. YouTube absolutely 100% does play favorites. That's not even a question. They absolutely do. And there is Ruby. Hey, everyone. Looking forward to hearing the answer to my question from a couple weeks ago. And it will be answered. And Donna greets Kitty and Ruby, and Carl greets Ruby. And Midnight is joining us over on Twitch. Hey, Sword People. It's going Midnight. And Dawn is joining us. Evening. Good evening, Dawn. And greetings for me. And greeting for Dawn. And more greetings for Dawn. Hey, Dawn. Hello, Thesis. Hey, and it goes behind. Yeah. Dog butt. He has been very clingy, yes. And yes, these blinds are absolutely terrible. I'm pretty sure, because some of them have been replaced in the decade and a half or so that we've lived here, but I'm pretty sure those blinds are the original ones to the building. Not just to us living here, but to the building itself. So it's not terribly surprising that they're crap. Sour Patch watermelon candies after nachos are super sour. Yeah. I just literally just before the show, like 15, 20 minutes ago, I introduced Foxy to the wonder that is taking Cool Ranch Doritos and dipping them in nacho cheese. You haven't tried it? Yeah. It's wonderful. And greetings for Midnight. Don't laugh. I will laugh at you if I want to. Okay. So, for those who don't remember, and, you know, it has been 2 weeks ago that the question was asked, so there might be people who don't remember. Towards the end of the show, Ruby asked, and I'm not going to get the wording 100% because it was 2 weeks ago, but she asked something like, in European martial arts, third position in the style that Nick and Trey teach. It's called second position in their system, and I've always heard it called long point. Now, for the people who are not aware, grab my trusty Hunzian trainer here. Long point, or third position, is basically just this. Having the sword in front of you, elbows slightly bent, pointed towards the opponent, kind of a bow and arrow type stance, so that you can quickly lunge. That is long point. Or I think it's third position, the way that Nick teaches. So she asked me if there was an equivalent name in Chinese martial arts. And I could have gotten away with a very simple answer. And Dan here is pretty much on the ball with that. The trouble with answers is sometimes the answer is no. I very easily could have just given that answer because the answer from all of my research, my 30 years of research, yes. It's been about 30 years that I have been studying Chinese martial arts. And basically the answer is no. But there is further context, because there's always further context. When I first started studying Chinese sword, I was a young teenager, and my Shifu, Lao Ye, grandfather, you've heard me talk about him before, it was never about the guards. It was never about the stances. You needed to have correct positions. You know, if I was over lunging in my gongbu, my bow and arrow stance, he'd hit me lightly, but, you know, he'd tap me under my knee to draw attention to it. If I lunged and my rear hand wasn't in the proper position, he'd smack that hand too. But it was never, you know, step into this position and a name to that position. You know, the lower body, the stances for your legs, those have names. Those have terms for them. And I think it was Kitty gave me an idea a while ago, maybe a month or two ago, about doing short form videos on the basic Kung Fu stances. And I'm going to do that. I very much plan on doing that. But the sword, you know, the sword positions, the sword guards, they were never given names. He would just tell me what to do. You know, hold the sword out in front of you, hold it up high, hold it at an angle in front of you with the blade pointed up at an angle. It was never named. It was never long point or first position, second position. There was never any specific terms for it. It was just, this is what you do. Or he would just show me how it was supposed to stand, and then I was going to copy it. So that was the beginning. And then, unfortunately, he passed, and I took some time to mourn before I continued learning. And in that time, an uncle of mine, and this is the only good thing I can actually give this uncle because he was not a good person, but he introduced me to Bruce Lee. Started watching Bruce Lee movies, and for the next several years, it was more about Bruce Lee and his martial art, Jeet Kune Do. And most of my sword knowledge kind of took a back seat to that, because I started studying Jeet Kune Do. Do I have it out here? No, I think it's back in the. I think it's in the other room. I bought. Excuse me. I bought the book that he wrote. I started studying his philosophy on martial arts. And for, 3 years or so, basically while I was in high school, it was all about Jeet Kune Do. And Jeet Kune Do, in and of itself, is not a style. It's more of a martial philosophy. And so it was all about Bruce himself didn't believe in styles. He didn't believe in limiting yourself to one way of fighting or one style or one system. He took bits and pieces of several different disciplines. He started as a student of Ip Man in Hong Kong, learning Wing Chun. But then he also took some fencing and some Western boxing, and he kind of created them into his own style of fighting. But he flat out tells you in that book, this is the way that I fight. This is how I do it. You don't need to do it this way. You can learn your own way. So Jeet Kune Do, like I said, it's a philosophy of fighting more than it is a fighting style. So for, like I said, 3 years or so, it was all about Jeet Kune Do. And because I was also a fan of Bruce Lee himself and his movies, I also built my own nunchucks because Bruce Lee is synonymous with that weapon. You watch a Bruce Lee movie, he's going to pull out some nunchucks at some point. So I started studying those. And like I said, most of my sword knowledge was kind of on the back burner during that time period. Oh, let's see here. Carl says, I wonder if Europeans gave names to stances as they might be taught in manuals more. Yes. Eastern knowledge seems to come more person to person. There are... Yeah, that is a very good observation. There are manuals, or there were manuals. There are a lot. There were a lot of Chinese martial arts manuals because you couldn't always teach face-to-face. And you wanted your family style or your Shifu style to continue on after your teacher was gone, and after you were gone, you wanted to have something tangible that you could say, this is what we did. We're gonna get into that, but that is a very good observation. Comes from psych and sociology background to notice learning styles. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Dan says fencing manuals have names for everything. They seem to be written to be used long after the writer's passing as a legacy. Exactly. Thesis is talking about synthesis of many disciplines into new styles. Yes and no. So there were manuals. But whereas the Western manuals were like widely distributed, and you can still find scans of originals and reproductions of original manuals. A lot of Chinese manuals were kind of lost to time. And most of the ones that survived are military manuals. And military manuals, they don't need to give names to things that come natural to people. Understand what I'm saying? If you are in a military setting and you are going to be fighting against another opponent, another military, another group, it's not as important to that particular style to have, okay, you need to get into this guard to do this attack. It's just a different way of thinking. And yes, I completely understand, Dan. Had to use shorter words because of comment character limits. Yes, I'm fully aware. But now here's where we're getting to the weeds a little bit. We'll call them the basic guards don't have specific names. And this is my opinion. So, take this with a grain of salt. But the way that I look at it, these military manuals, and I do have one on hand, I'm going to be talking about it in a second. They are assuming that either you have no training whatsoever, so you're coming into this completely blind, and they're going to teach you how to fight on a battlefield, or they're assuming that you already got some training at home, and so therefore they don't have to go over this stuff again. And so let's say, for instance, you have 5 or 6 different military soldiers. 3 of them come from 3 completely different schools, and the other 2 of them are just, complete beginners at things. If you have to know that these 3 who already have some martial training, possibly all 3 of them have different names for the same stance just based on the style that they started in. So, maybe the first one, they call it, forward guard. And the second one calls it front gate guard. And the third one calls it straight guard. If you're writing a military manual, are you going to go out and find out every single name for every single stance, just across the board, just so you can write this down? No, you're not. Exactly. Didn't think of that. Get into position 1 and everyone does something different. Yes. Now, again, this is only my opinion. I'm not claiming to be an expert in this. This is just the way I see it. By new styles, I wanted to say something on the order of personalized for the practitioner. Exactly. So if you're looking at this from a military standpoint, you have to write manuals, and these were all done by hand at the time and copied by hand at the time. Are you going to go out of your way and learn the names of every other position of that guard just so you can have it in this book. No, you're not going to do that. Because that would be a tremendous amount of work. Now, the other two are complete beginners. So, if you have these 5 people in one unit, just these 5 is one unit. These 3 could very easily be tasked with teaching the basics to the other 2. And if these 3 all come from different styles with different names for different guards, it's going to be very, very confusing to the other 2 people. They're not going to know what's going on. And if these 5 are one unit, then you have a different 5 over here that's a completely different unit with different basic styles. And then you put them all together, and then you have another 5 and another 5 and 100 and 200 and 50 and 87 and 36. And all of them learned a different style and a different name for different guards. And then you get the general up there, and he calls out, assume forward guard, and everybody does something different. That's going to be completely insane. So you needed a standardized name, and not even necessarily a name, but you need something that everyone can just go into. Yeah. Inigo is playing his mom hands faster than my bite, and the answer is usually no, but sometimes it is. Oh, Dan. Oh, my friend. One day I want to get a copy of Sun Tzu's Art of War and see how Machiavelli's book by the same title differs. I have a copy of The Art of War. I've mentioned this before. Came from Foxy's dad. There is, I believe, yes, there is a comic book. Now, this is not insulting anyone's intelligence. But there is a comic book of The Art of War that goes through the entire book in comic book form. Now, the book itself is fairly dense. And I don't mean that just in terms of, the size of the book. It is a martial military philosophy book. So by condensing it into comic book form, you can still get across the ideas that Sun Tzu is trying to convey to people, but it doesn't get so into the weeds about these things. Now, Carl has a very interesting question. I wonder if that happens in other areas. Oh, yes, it does. Kitty, does that happening in dancing? I imagine it could. I mean, calling dancings by different names. And Kitty says yes, which is not all that surprising. The problem with trying to get everyone on the same page when everyone comes from vastly different backgrounds is they come from vastly different backgrounds. And so, like I said, most of the manuals that survived are military manuals. These smaller, like smaller style manuals are gone. So a lot of what is being taught today is a recreation based on the little bits that we have been able to recover from. Maybe there was a manual that was found that was incomplete. And so someone else, excuse me, that is not happening nearly as often as it did a few months ago. But someone else has to look at what's there and look at what they know about the martial art that they're learning and the person that they're learning it from, and rebuild off of that. So a lot of Eastern manuals that survive to this day are military manuals. And those military manuals are not going to be so concerned with static stances. They want to teach you how to move. They want to teach you how to face another person. They're not going to be as concerned with how you're standing before the attack comes. They want you to know what to do when it comes. So that's where this comes in. So, Ruby, the basic answer to your question is no. From my knowledge in this subject, there is not Chinese terms for static guards. But there is always a but. There are names for different moves after the guard. So this book is The Ancient Art of the Chinese Long Straight Sword, and it is translated by Jack Chen from ChineseLongsword.com, and it is a recreation of a Chinese military manual from 400 years ago. It comes from the Wu Beiji. And the Wu Beiji is a military manual Sorry, guys. Trying to bring this up here. There we go. Now we go like this. Oh, yeah. Carl says, when I wrote the Munzi book, I tried to use different words and terms that people might see it called in different cultures on social media sites. Yes. And yes, Chinese names for moves are very poetic. No, Ruby. The guards are important. The names for the guards are not important. Yes, they are still important. It's just we don't have a standardized names that everyone uses when they're talking about those positions. They just don't have a word for it. It's that simple. So we are going to share our screen here. And there we go. This is the ChineseLongsword.com website, where you can still buy this book, but you can also buy it from Amazon. Now this is, it has scans of the original pages, which are the pictures on the thumbnail. And yes, Carl, this book originally did come from Lulu, but from what I know, it's not there anymore. You have to buy it from Amazon now. But as you can see, the Wu Beiji Military Preparation Manual is an ancient Chinese military book written in 1621 by Mao Yuanyi, a Ming Dynasty military officer. This is the biggest book in Chinese history on military topics, and inside it is a chapter, one chapter, on swordsmanship with a two-handed long straight sword. So this book is only one chapter of a military preparedness manual. And it has 24 separate stances with a two-handed double-edged straight sword. Now, stances in this context is the same as the context you're thinking of. So let's take that away again. But it's not a stance as much as it is a sword maneuver. It is used in combat. Machiavelli is fascinating reading as long as you remember he was paranoid, backstab. Yeah. Another reason I don't like the Zon, if you offer your books there, you can't elsewhere, especially if you're indie. Yeah. This is also very true. Poetic names help people to remember things better. You're not wrong. So I'm going to bring up the two pictures that I have that are on the thumbnail. We're going to go over where they are in the book. So, share screen again. Okay, see this one right here. Holding the sword about eye level with it up at an angle. That just so you can see better. It's right there. That is the Bautoscher, which is the leopard head stance. And now you're going to turn the page. You're going to see an explanation for the leopard head stance. So this is used as a downward cut against an opponent. The third verse implies that your cut is like a huge mountain crushing down on your opponent. If you need to make a subsequent move, you can erect your sword's tip to thrust upward like the subdue tiger stance. So basically, you got your sword up here, and you're going to step down and cut. And then if you need to recover, you're going to pop the sword back up with the tip pointing at your opponent. So, leopard head stance. Now, the next one is this one here, about chest high. Once again, pointed at the opponent, because remember, pointy end goes into the other man. Looks like a batter ready for a pitch in baseball or softball. Yeah, you're not wrong. They even show you, though. Let me come back here for a second. They even show you the equivalent in one Japanese style. Right there. But as you can see, he's holding it much closer to the body. He's holding it like here. Whereas with Chinese style, it's more out here. Instead of being right here, right next to your ear, it's out a little bit. And yeah, it is a stabbing stance. You're not wrong. That is right there. Which, as you can see, is called the Tanfusher, which is a flat stomach stance. That is a thrusting stance. So yeah, it's a stabbing stance. You're going to go from holding it close to your body to stepping out and stabbing at your opponent. And it even shows you if you need extra range to let go with your rear hand to give you a little bit extra range to reach the opponent. So that is the flat stomach stance. Now the next one or next two actually are these two here. Now you see, whereas the last one, your body was facing the opponent and the sword was pointing at them. This one, your body is facing one direction and the sword is facing the other direction. that one is right here. These are literally subsequent pages in this book. So the first one was page 36. The next one is page 40, then page 44, and I'm sure you can guess where the next one is. So, the 夸有事. Sure, I'm guessing you probably figured out by now, is basically stance. Because you have the 夸有事, and you have the 探夫事, and you have the 保透事. So sure, that character right there is sure or stance. And this is the step across right stance. And this is used as a horizontal slashing. You can see it right there. He's starting with the sword about hip level, faced behind him, and he's going to step across and cut. Can also be used as a block. You know, if your opponent is attacking you, you can also use this to intercept and block their cut. Foxy is almost always dogged. So these static stances do and do not have names. Because these are all named, yes? But you notice, if you look through this whole book, I just saw it. Where is it? Right here. Focus. You notice 1, 2, 3. He's starting in a forward guard. And it tells you raised cauldron stance is the first stance in the manual. But if you look at the raised cauldron stance, he's not in the first position that you start in. You're starting in a forward guard. You go into the raised cauldron stance, and then you cut down. You're starting in that long point that I mentioned. But if you read the manual, it says raised cauldron stance is the first stance in the manual. If this has any significance, I would think that it's because the stance represents a very important fundamental concept in sword fighting. Let me explain. Suppose you're in a sword fight and you are holding your sword in front of you like number 1 above. He literally says, holding the sword in front of you. He doesn't give it a name. He just says, holding the sword in front of you. To cut the enemy, you raise up your sword like in 2 here, then cut down and end up in 3. This is how typically practice occurs. But it just says, hold the sword in front of you. It doesn't give it a name. Just says, hold the sword in front of you. And over here, on the next page, you have, starting with the sword in front of you, you go into Raise Cauldron, and then you cut. It is showing you the difference between, oh, hey, Rich is joining us. Looks like Fool to Roof to almost looks like Long Point. Okay. And Rich, thank you for becoming a patron. I really appreciate that. Rich is my newest patron. I really appreciate that. Okay, got to go back here. Dan says, it strikes me as odd that I can translate those into what I learned in foil fencing. Always regretted that for safety they wouldn't let us learn saber. With a foil, the tip is your entire offense. With the blade being your defense against attack. With saber, the entire blade is both attack and defense. Yeah. And greetings for Rich. European manuals are more oriented to position physics, and Easterns are more concerned with movement. That's a really good way to look at it, yeah. Because if we go back, Raise Cauldron looks a lot like Wrath. Yeah. Greetings for Rich. We go back to the actual page itself. This is the scan of the manual page. This is the translation of the manual page. So, if we read what the translation actually says, the Raise Cauldron stance is the raise top block. This technique can block an attack from the top, left leg, right hand, flat platform stance, make a fast mid-region attack forward, retreat step, and swipe skirt. So, it's literally telling you that it is a block, but it is also moving to attack. Dan says, of course, with foil, epee, and saber, fancy footwork is necessary as well, even though saber is mostly cavalry, yeah. And Rich says, hey, when I have funds to help out, more than happy, you do good stuff. Thank you. And I really do appreciate it. You have no idea. I really appreciate it. I was actually going to send a message from Patreon earlier today, and I completely spaced because I was reading my book. Greetings, and howdy, just got back from couch buying. Well, no, I'm not going to make the couch joke. I'm not going to. Just keep it away from certain people. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say. So, Raise Cauldron is literally showing you on the next page blocking an overhead strike. But if you turn the page, it's also showing you the difference between basically chambering a downward cut like this or going into Raise Cauldron. Now, I wish I had someone here to show you what I'm talking about here. But if we read the page here, now imagine you're in B in the depicted scenario. That's B. Again, forward, long point looking guard. It just says, imagine you're in B. It doesn't give it a name. What do you think will happen as you raise up your sword in stage 2 over here? you'll be swiftly cut down by A here. You won't have the chance to reach stage 3 because in this guard, you will be vulnerable to this attack. So that's where Ray's Cauldron comes into play. You will block that overhead attack, and then you will be able to cut down your opponent. So the Ray's Cauldron is a guard, as Rich said, looks like Wrath Guard in European martial arts. Here, it's called Zhu Ding Shi, or the Ray's Cauldron stance. And Rich says, in German longsword, you're always flowing from one guard to the other. When you switch guard, you do so with movement and a cut. You never do one without the other. Yes. And if you look through this book, you're going to find a lot of instances of explanations of the stances, but you're looking at them in terms of movement, of fighting, not static standing. So if we go back to the Kuo Shi, again, you have the sword behind you, about waist, maybe slightly higher than waist high. And it's showing you that you're stepping across. You look at the original stance. You have your left leg forward. Your right leg is back. It even tells you right there. Left leg, right hand. And then you're going to step with your back leg forward and cut. Or step forward and intercept a cut. Now there is one more right here from the thumbnail pictures, which is page 48, the very next page in the stances. Right here. Again, the sword is pointed backwards, but downwards this time instead of horizontally like it is over here. So, right there. This is the Liao Lu Shi, the lift pass stance. I believe, and Rich, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. I believe that this is similar to the Fool's Guard in European martial arts. Now, why would anyone in their right mind have their sword pointed downwards like that. Let's get our trusty Hanjan again. Ah, okay. Flug, which is plow. Okay. Isn't the Fool's Guard similar though? So, okay. Fool is straight down in front. That one's backwards. Okay. Back up again. This is a forward guard. Your blade is between you and the opponent. So why would anyone stand like this? Left leg forward, left hand, sword about waist high, with the sword pointed down and behind you. Now, you could transfer this into a upward cutting motion. You have to come from here. You have to start from here to come up to here. So you're here. Why would you want to have the sword? Yeah, that's plow. Okay. See, I'm still learning the guards in European, in HEMA, in historical European martial arts. Let's read what this stance is for, shall we? The lift pass stance is the lift pass block. Every single one of these, you go through the entire book. It's going to tell you. We go back to the previous one. The step across right stance is the step across right strike. The lift pass stance is the lift pass block. This can defend against low strikes, shielding the left, protecting the right. Left leg, left hand. Step forward fast into drill strike stance, which is right there. It's showing you that this is a block to a low strike to the ankle, or the lower leg. So say, for instance, that you're facing someone in front of you. Back up again. I'm fighting someone here. Someone comes up from behind me, attacking at my leg. I'm going to go from here. We're going to switch to the heel of my foot, turn at the ankle, step forward with the left leg, and I'm going to block that incoming attack. So we're going to go from here to here. And then, now that this back attack is dealt with, there's still a person in front of me that I need to switch back into, which goes into the next attack, or the next guard, the drill strike, which is here. So you're going to go from here, move chair, to here, want to make sure I get this right because I don't want to be giving people, wrong advice. We go from here to here. No, here. Now you can tell I'm not used to using this hand. This is usually here, guarding center. Even though this has plenty of room for two hands, I'm a one-handed person. Now, every single stance in this book, when you read it, and Nick has a copy, I sent him one. If you're interested in Chinese swordsmanship at all, get a copy of this book. It's going to teach you some stuff. Every single page is going to tell you exactly what you're supposed to be doing. The raised cauldron stance is the raised top block. The point and sword stance is the point sword thrust. The left wing stance is the left wing strike. It's telling you if it's a static block, if it's a strike, if it's a stab. It's going to tell you right here, the very first line. If you look at the manual page, because this is Chinese, it's not read this way. Most people, if they've never come across Asian writing, are going to look at this and read it the same way they read over here. So, in the West, the order that we read things in is left to right and up and down. So you start from the left, read to the right, you start at the top and read to the bottom. So if a Westerner came across this page, they would read from here to here, go down to here, so on, all the way down the page, and be very, very confused. That's not how it's read. The Chinese are read from top to bottom and right to left. So this page is actually starting over here. That right there. And then you read down. And then you go to the next line. And you read down. And you go to the next line. And you read down. So if you look right here, that is the same as the name of the stance over here. And then the next line is this first line right here is this over here that tells you the left wing stance is the left wing strike. So this isn't a block. It's a strike. I love this book. And yes, there is some poetry in here. There is some flowery language in here. But this is going to teach you, because each one of these is going to show you the stance. And then you're going to turn the page, and it's going to explain why you're doing what you're doing. It's going to give you the why. And it goes all the way through the book. Right here. The drive wagon stance is the drive wagon block. You turn the page. The exhibit flag stance is the exhibit flag strike. Turn the page. It tells you why. And you go all the way to the back of the book, if I can find it. And it shows you a form that you can do based on all of the previous stances to flow, just like Rich said, flowing, going from one to the next, to the next. It's going to show you how to do it. To go from raising cauldron to point sword to left wing, all the way through to the end. So, stances, Chinese martial arts, do have names. They have poetic names. But it's more based on, this is not the name of the guard or the stance, it's the move that you're naming. So every single time that you come across in this book, when it's explaining a stance, you'll come across times like you did in the very beginning with raised cauldron. You'll come across times where it'll be showing you a demonstration of the stance, and it'll show you starting here, but it will not give it a name. It'll just be like 1, like A. It doesn't name the guard. So to try to condense the last hour and 15 minutes, basic guards, Chinese martial arts, long point, I'm not sure. They're not given names because the sword manuals are all about military fighting. So they want you to know the names of stances that you can use for more than just static standing. So let's go through these last comments. To deflect an oncoming attack as well as get set up for a riposte. Yeah, pretty much, yeah. With German longsword, the plow guard gets tricky because you're using the sword as a lever and it can come at you from all kinds of weird directions. You saw. that was the last one that we did. Lift pass. Blocking, going from down to up. So, yeah. Yeah. Chair! Melee has its own set of rules. Spatial awareness becomes critical. You're not wrong. Interested in staying alive despite an opponent's best efforts to modify that condition. Yeah. And Houston, Texas, Dave is joining us. Hello, world. Hello, Dave. How you doing? And greetings, and greetings, and greetings, and greetings. Hi, gang. And more greetings for Dawn. And that's it. So there you go, Ruby. Stances have names. But when you're static guarding, those don't have names because the military manuals that are surviving examples of Chinese swordsmanship are not as focused on standing static. They want you moving. It's the same thing with unarmed martial arts. You know, the movement has a name, but the standing still does not. Because you want to be moving, you want to be blocking, striking. Very informative, I would hope so. Been here the whole time just being quiet. Hey, bloody good show. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Like I said, I'm trying to at least once a month have an actual martial arts topic and not focus. I'm trying to keep things within the realms of culture, philosophy, and martial arts. But I don't always have martial arts. Sometimes there's like big gaps between martial arts, and I'm trying to at least once a month have a martial arts topic. And no, there's nothing wrong with being quiet. Good show. Thank you. And you are very welcome, Ruby. If you ever have any other questions like this, please feel free to ask me. And if it's something that I can give a shorter answer to, I have short form videos too. Good green tea and learning. That's what this is all about, man. Have yourself some tea and learn. Now, I will probably be back next week. Next Saturday is July 5th, and unfortunately, because of the rules of my state, that whole week, 7 days, it is legal to light fireworks. for the whole week. So most likely, because it's still light out, hopefully I will not have big booms going off while I'm trying to have my show. We're going to find out how Inigo does with fireworks. And hopefully he will not be terrified, shivering in my lap. I will hopefully, most likely, have a show next week. Going to try one more time to play Nine Dragons for everyone. One more time. StreamYard, for whatever reason, does not like Nine Dragons. I'm going to try it one last time. If it doesn't work, I have other things that I can talk about. Have to translate everything into what I was trained in fencing classes or growing up being bullied. That's fine. Not a good idea this year. It's tinder dry out here. Yes, it is. Yeah. Worried about more wildfires. We're super dry. Yeah, we are. So next week, we're going to try Nine Dragons again. Don's thinking of doing a puzzle stream after Teahouse. Don't want to step on toes. Do not want anyone to think I'm using thesis. No, it's fine. It's all good. Inigo ends up shivering in your lap. Foxy has to take a video, and you have to say Zoink Scoob. Oh, okay. Yeah. We can go with that. Oh, if you want to do a puzzle stream, Don, go for it. I am pretty much done here. Thank everyone for coming. If you're interested in Chinese swordsmanship, pick up this book. Please. You will learn a lot. I want to give a special shout out to Dan Hollifield, Joe Bachman, and Rich Asplund as my patrons. I really appreciate you guys. No Stupid O'Clock or Last Man Standing. Go ahead. Yeah. Good show. Yeah. Thank you. I will see everyone next week for hopefully a gaming stream. 再见。